Hello and welcome back. In this video, I'd like to talk to you about another service called the AWS Reachability Analyzer, something that CloudOps engineers would often use to test for connectivity between source resources and destination resources in a VPC. Let's take a look at the AWS Reachability Analyzer in this video. So what is the Reachability Analyzer? It is a network troubleshooting tool that helps you determine whether network traffic can flow between two AWS resources in your VPC. Instead of guessing or manually checking security groups, route tables, NACLs, it analyzes the network configuration and shows whether a path exists and why or why not, as the case may be. The Reachability Analyzer is going to analyze your network configuration. Now, it doesn't send ping requests across the various resources. It doesn't do that at all. What it does is it actually analyzes your configuration, which is a far more effective way of identifying where the potential issue might lie. And so it can answer questions like, why can't my EC2 instance reach the RDS database? Or is my application load balancer able to reach targets in the private subnets? Why security rule is blocking traffic? And is my routing configuration correct? Those questions can be answered with the help of the Reachability Analyzer. So here we've got some resources in the public subnet, a EC2 instance, a load balancer, a Lambda function, and we've got resources in the private subnet, EC2 instances, RDS databases, NAT gateways. What we want to do with the Reachability Analyzer is determine, using a source and destination analysis along with protocol and ports that have been configured, whether traffic can flow between the source and the destination. And the Reachability Analyzer is going to inspect the configuration of the VPC, the configuration of the resources, their security groups, their network access control list, the ports and protocols on which we're performing the test on, and see whether or not that traffic will flow. So it's going to check the route tables, the security groups, the network access control list, the internet and NAT gateways, the VPC peering and transit gateway paths, and ultimately help you with your network troubleshooting issues in complex VPCs configuration. You're able to look at verifying security posture. You're able to validate connectivity for multi-tier architectures, examine cross-VPC and hybrid connectivity, and ensure that you're able to reduce the MTTR, or the mean time to recovery, during incidents. An absolute tool for CloudOps engineers. Let's take a look at an example of how we would set this up for a lab environment and a demonstration. To illustrate how Reachability Analyzer can be used, I've set up a quick demonstration environment where I have a VPC with an EC2 instance deployed and a backend RDS database. I want to just quickly show you how this works. The EC2 instance, for instance, is protected by a security group, as is the RDS database, and the RDS database only allows inbound traffic on port 3306 from any resource attached to the web service security group. Now, we're going to use the Reachability Analyzer to perform a quick test whilst the security group have got the right set of permissions in place, which is the fact that connectivity on TCP 3306, which is the MySQL port, is permitted. We're then going to go ahead and update the security group for the RDS database and basically get rid of that inbound rule. And then we're going to use the Reachability Analyzer to see how it picks that up. So let's jump into the AWS Management Console and let me quickly do you a quick demonstration. Okay, so here we are on my AWS Management Console. I'm in the development account in the North Virginia region. If I quickly take you to VPCs, I want to show you my VPC that I've created in the North Virginia region. This is not the actual Reachability VPC. This is just a sample VPC. I've called it RR VPC anyway, but essentially it only has 4 subnets. So it has got 2 private subnets and 2 public subnets. And we can see that the public subnets are connected or attached to the public route table, which incidentally is sending traffic via the internet gateway. So the RR internet gateway out to the internet. The main route table, on the other hand, doesn't have any direct routes to the internet. That's where we're going to host our database. The databases do not need access to the internet. Our web server is going to be hosted in public subnet 1 for the purposes of illustration. I've also got 2 security groups in place. Let me just quickly show you that as well. So the 2 security groups are our web server SG, which accepts inbound traffic on port 80 and port 22, so we can SSH into it. And that is from the internet. And then I've got the database security group, which is going to accept inbound traffic on port 3306 for MySQL, but only with servers attached to the web server security group. If we go to the EC2 instances, the web server in question is this web server over here. You'll see that it's attached to the RR web server security group, and I can connect to it. Okay, so I'm now logged into the web server and all looking good to go. And essentially what I should be able to do is I should be able to connect to the backend database. Now, in order to facilitate this demonstration to happen, I have installed the MariaDB client software on this machine. And so I can connect back to any of the MariaDB or MySQL servers in the backend on an RDS database. So in fact, we can just quickly see MySQL version, and you'll see that I've got that distribution installed and MySQL version 15.3. So we're all looking good. I can actually connect to it. The database, let me just quickly show you that as well. So I'm going to go to the database, and I've got a database deployed, which obviously is just running a simple database. There's no real data in it. It's called the Reachability, so that's available as well. And I can click into that, and that's the endpoint that I can connect to from my server. So in order to connect to this endpoint, what I could do, for instance, is I can go to my instance, which is sitting in the public subnet, and essentially provide the details of my RDS endpoint. Okay, and I can quickly connect to the endpoint address of the database. Okay. And then that's on port 3306. The username for this database is admin. So I'll click on admin, type in admin, and then I'll type in my password, which is what it is. And there it is. I've now connected to the database in the backend. Okay, so I can just quickly go ahead and do show databases. And just enter on that, and I've got my list of databases available, and you can see Reachability as an instance of my database has been set up already. So I'm connected to the backend database, so that's looking good. Okay, so if we go into the Reachability Analyzer, let's just do that next. So Reachability Analyzer, we can just click here, and I'll open that up in another tab. Right, we can actually create and analyze a path. So very simple, I'll click create. I'll give this a Troubleshoot EC2 to DB path as my path configuration name. Okay, my source traffic is going to be an instance, specifically the web server instance, because that's where I'm on. Okay, so next I need to select the destination. Now the destination is not an instance, it's an RDS database. Now, here is something to be aware of. You don't actually have an RDS database endpoint listed in this list. That's because the RDS database endpoint is not exposed itself. However, what we need to find out is whether we can connect to the security group attached to the network interface card of the actual resource. Okay, so we're going to click on network interfaces, and then we need to select a destination from here. So to identify which network interface is associated with the security group of the RDS database, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my instances again. And down here, further down under network and security, I'm going to open up network interfaces in another tab. Okay, so these are my network interfaces. And you can see that the RR database SG is attached to this network interface ID, okay? Ends in B0DC. So if we go back here, we can take a look at, and that's the one over there, B0DC. So that's the network interface that the database is attached to via the security group. The protocol is going to be TCP, obviously, and we are then going to be in a position to then perform a quick test and see whether or not we can connect through. So it's a TCP protocol that we're using, and we can go ahead and click create and analyze path. So this path is now being analyzed and takes a few minutes to complete, and we'll come back to it once it's all done. Okay, and as you can see, it is saying that it's reachable. So we can actually take a look at this in a bit more detail and look at the path detail itself. So there's our web server. It's attached to a network interface card. Okay, that traffic is going through to the RR web service security group, where outbound is allowed all. And we can see that it's using the public route table to have access to the local route in that VPC, the 10.0.0.0/16 VPC. There is also an inbound rule on the network access control list that allows all inbound traffic as well. So there's no restrictions there. There's our security group for the RDS database. Okay. And we can see that the port range 3306 is mapped to 3306, and that is allowing an inbound connection. And ultimately, that means that we're allowing traffic through. And that's why when we perform this exercise, we've got no issues. If I come out of this for a second, okay, just clear the screen. Let's go ahead and make a slight change to the security group for the RDS database. So this inbound rule over here, I'm going to go ahead and edit inbound rules. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of them. Click Save. So I've just removed the inbound rules on the RDS database security group. In other words, no traffic should be able to hit that database. And we can test that out. If I ran that same command to try and access my database, just put in my password, it's not going to work. Okay, it's going to basically time out. And that is because the security group is not allowing inbound traffic on port 3306 anymore for the database. Okay, let's go back to our Reachability Analyzer, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to rerun the analysis. Okay, so we're going to rerun the analysis, and we're going to go ahead and click Confirm. Just going to refresh that page, and it's just pending that analysis again. Okay, so that's just going to run through. Okay, and you can see there it is. It says not reachable. Now, as a cloud ops engineer, you want to find out why is it not reachable. So the path details over here is going to help us out. We can see that we've got the web server that's connecting through, no issues there. Okay, it's attached to this subnet. It is bound by this web service security group. Outbound is allowed all, so all traffic is allowed, so no issues there. Then we've got the actual public RT, the public route table that's allowing traffic locally in that VPC. And then we've got inbound on the network access control list that's allowing inbound traffic in that network. So no issues there as well. The network access control lists are not blocking traffic, but we can see that the inbound traffic against in that VPC, in that subnet, we've got a red against the ENI, the network interface associated with that security group, the B0DC. Okay, so that was the security group that we showed earlier, which was associated with the database security group. And you can see this is where the problem lies. So the problem suggests that there is an issue with that network interface card, and that network interface card is associated with that security group, the database security group. So having looked at that path and saying that this is where the problem is, I'm able to then go to that network interface card and reference it with that security group. Therefore, I'm able to go back to the VPC, look at my security groups, look at my RDS database security groups, and see, in fact, well, hang on, there is no inbound rule allowing traffic on port 3306 to the database anyway. And so what we need to do is we need to add that rule. So let's go ahead and edit inbound rules and click an inbound rule. And we're going to select the MySQL Aurora rule type, and that's port 3306. And that's going to have to come from the web servers security group as the inbound source, and then save rules. So we've now put the rule in place. Okay, so we can go ahead and take a look at that database rule again, that database security group again, look at the inbound rules, that's all set. Okay, so then what I can do is I can now go back to the Reachability Analyzer, okay, and look at this Reachability Analyzer, which we were checking earlier, and then rerun the analysis and click Confirm and let that analyze the path through to see whether it's going to work this time. So currently it is running the analysis. I'm just going to refresh this page, and it says it's in the pending state. So we're just waiting for that analysis to complete. And now it says it's reachable. And you can see that the ENI interface associated with the security group of the database security group no longer is marked as red. Okay, so that is now going through. And so ultimately what this means is that we can now access our database from our EC2 instance. Okay, so if I go back to the EC2 instance, I can rerun that command where I want to connect to my database. So let me just put that in there again. So there is the RDS database endpoint that needs to go in. I will just grab that from here. Okay. And then we need to put in the database username, which is admin. And then I can put in my password for the database. And as you can see, I'm now logged into the database. So if I do show databases, semicolon, there you go. I can now access my database again. Okay, so that pretty much brings us to the end of this video. I'll see you folks on the next one. Thank you.